What's happening, everybody, and how the hell are y'all doing? For episode 246 of the Crash Bang Boom podcast, today's guest is drummer Jorma Vik of the Eagles of Death Metal and formerly of the Bronx. Jorma and I had a good time rolling down memory lane with the Bronx early records that coincided with my early days of being in New York, as well as dealing with the ergonomic issues resulting from years of touring, the hilarious story of how he got the Eagles of Death Metal gig, and a whole lot more. So I hope y'all get some giggles in along the way like Jorma and I did. Crash Bang Boom podcast can be found on iTunes Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Luminary, Google Play, Podbean, and Amazon Music Podcast. Feel free to check out any of the previous 240 plus episodes and give me a like, a subscription, or a positive review. The support is appreciated, and I certainly thank all of y'all for hanging with me all these years. So without further ado, here we go. Jorma Vik, EODM. Motorcycles, drums, and rock and roll. Call it a trifecta. Crash Bang Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Yeah! All right, Jorma Vik, getting through all the wingdings and things and technical mishaps, it appears that we're alive and well in 2021, and we can even have a phone call and record it and do the whole thing. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Trying to get this bus a-rolling, man. Everything's going wrong, but I think we're going good now, so as long as the batteries don't die, we're straight.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, man. So just from talking to you a little bit, it sounds like you took a little break from drumming. I know you were out in L.A. for quite some time, obviously. What did you do during all this COVID madness, and how was it getting back up on the kit, man?
You know, I didn't touch a drumstick for a year and a half, and it felt fucking awesome. I needed a break so bad.
Yeah.
You know, in the Bronx, I was in a band called the Bronx before I joined Eagles of Death Metal probably 5 years ago now, and we toured just relentlessly.
Yeah.
You know,
I saw you many times. Every time you came through New York, it was like your second home. I was like, oh, the Bronx are in New York.
It certainly was. Yeah, we had a blast out there.
Yeah.
So I got burned out after 20 years of touring most of the year.
Yeah.
And so it was really nice to kind of just step back away from it, get some new perspective on it. And, you know, we just played our first show in a year and a half, and I was a little unsure how it was going to feel. You know, to be quite honest with you, I was a little like, fuck, is this even for me anymore?
Wow.
And we did the show, and it was fucking awesome. It was a blast. And that feeling came right back where it was just like, this is what I do, you know?
It's definitely wild to think about that, because again, I saw y'all coming through New York so many times, but I guess prior to getting back on that gig and sitting down at the kit and just sort of reacclimating yourself to it, because you know, they say like these things that there's a sort of muscle memory in it, and you can get back, and it's just like riding a bike, but with something that has such a physicality like the drums, sometimes it can be a little bit awkward to your body and taking a break. I've never taken a break as long as you have, but was it a little tough on your body? Was it weird getting back in the motion?
Most definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of muscles that you just don't use typically.
Yeah.
Especially in my forearms, I felt it for sure. And I made sure to drink a shitload of water and eat a bunch of potassium before I played, just so I didn't get those, you know, cramps and whatnot. But yeah, definitely for a couple days after that show, I was feeling it.
Oh man. Well, in your layoff when not playing drums, from looking at your Instagram, it seemed like you were primarily riding motorcycles. Was that what was going on? You were just riding motorcycles, man?
Yeah, it was something that I was into when I was a kid. I grew up kind of in the middle of nowhere out in the woods. So, you know, my two hobbies were drums and dirt bikes. And it got to a point where I kind of had to choose one or the other, because I didn't have money to spend on both.
Yeah.
And I was hurting myself a lot on the dirt bikes and whatnot. And so I decided to take drums more seriously. And so I stopped riding motorcycles. And that's would have been when I was about 12 or 13. And then, you know, started playing drums, and I got more serious, ended up dropping out of high school and doing it through the mail so I could just focus on drums, because at that point that's what I realized I wanted to do with my life.
Yeah.
And graduated early, we just kind of wanted to fuck with people. And, we didn't really think we were going to get a record deal. We were just having fun. I think I only went to MI for 3 months before I became a music school dropout, because I had met some dudes in a band, and we just started touring right then.
Was that the Bronx, or was that pre-Bronx?
It was pre-Bronx.
Gotcha.
It was a band called Death on Wednesday. So we did some tours with like Social Distortion, Reverend Horton Heat.
Nice.
And we had a pretty cool little following in Southern California. We did pretty well. And then in the early 2000s, probably around 2002, me and Joby started the Bronx, and it just took off like wildfire. So
yeah, it's a crazy thing to think about, because from my understanding, I mean, when y'all started it, within a couple of shows, you were getting noticed and in playing under what, a dozen shows or so. Y'all already had a record deal on the table.
Yeah, it happened super quick. I had met some dudes in my prior band to the Bronx who were kind of, they were plugged into that whole world. And so when we started the Bronx, we kind of we recorded a few songs with a friend of mine, and I think I only gave 3 copies out. And this guy that I knew, who was kind of a manager at the time, he got super stoked on it, and he was on the same. We all kind of worked in one way or another in the music industry at the time for different record labels and whatnot. Like Matt worked the mailroom at a punk label. Joby was the art director at Vagrant Records.
Okay.
Our bass player at the time also worked at Vagrant Records, and I just kind of hopped around doing weird stuff for different punk labels around Southern California. And the climate in music at that point was really interesting, whereas we kind of caught it at the tail end of the label still shelling out like a decent amount of money.
Totally.
And there was a lot of hype at the time around, I think had the first Strokes record come out. I think the first Strokes record had just come out, and kind of more indie bands were getting bigger. And
sure.
So we played one show, and it turned into this like the heads of like all the labels were there at our first real show. We had played some little party before that, but our first real show, it was like all these record execs.
Crazy.
And we used to do this thing where we'd open the set with just a fucking terrible song. We wrote like the shittiest song just to bum people out and to fuck with people.
Okay.
And so we play this first song, and half of them leave.
Wow.
And then we do the rest of our set. And, at the end of that night, we ended up with, I think, 5 or 6 deals from that one show. And that was our first real show.
Oh my God. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. We just kind of fucked with them for a while, and, did the whole thing where we got wined and dined and flown out to New York. I think that was everybody's first trip to New York. None of us had been to New York at that point. 2002. Wow. Yeah, it was a while. There was one. I mean, total stereotype. There was one, the head of A&R at a company that will go unmentioned took us to like a strip club, and like, it was just, oh my God, it was so tragic. But at the same time, we're in our early 20s, just babies, you know, and we're just like fucking mouth agape.
Yeah.
Just like, what the fuck is this world?
That is so bizarre.
And yeah, we ended up signing with Island Def Jam.
Yeah. It's wild, like you mentioned. It's definitely a strange time, and I was looking at the timeline of it as well, because even the late '90s, and then especially when you get into the early 2000s, it's something that I mentioned previously, where just the rock radio, and I don't know whether it was Naps or whether the major radio stations were bought out by bigger corporations, but it seemed as though the template for rock bands became increasingly sort of
regurgitated, sort of exhausted, boring themes with these pretty boring bands. Because you and I are probably about the same age, and in the early '90s and everything, I got to see all of those grunge bands and see like rock at its height for that time. I wouldn't say that it's been that big since then. And then it was like after that died out, it was just the dregs after that. In the early 2000s, in particular, I just tuned rock radio and rock out. But what's funny about it is that in a magazine, I saw the Bronx, the first record. And it was described as like, if you're a fan of Suicidal Tendencies and like maybe Guns N' Roses or something, you'll dig this band. And I was like, I definitely dig both of those bands. But at the time, I went to my buddy's house because he had the internet. And I don't think I don't know if I even had a computer. I must have. Maybe I didn't have internet. Anyway, I went to his house and ordered, I think, the CD from your website, from the Bronx website, and got it in the mail and listened to it. And then I was like, oh, this is fucking awesome. And then I played it for everybody. And then I ended up in New York on a job, and the Bronx just happened to be playing while I was there, and I was like, oh, I get to go see this band. This is amazing. And I saw y'all it was the prior location for the Knitting Factory that was kind of in Soho, Chinatown area.
No shit.
I was at
I
that
remember
show.
that show.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's hilarious too, because I was at the bar, and you know that Joe Jackson song, Is She Really Going Out With Him? It's so apropos to New York. And the whole time I was there, I was like, God, check out all these hot chicks with these like kind of funny looking dudes. And at some point I was at the bar, and I saw this guy kind of balding. I too am balding, and he had a pretty hot girlfriend. I was like, I don't know who that guy is. Pretty hot girlfriend. And then the Bronx comes up, and it was Matt, your singer. I was like, oh shit.
That's amazing. Matt always did pretty well for himself.
Yeah, man. It was so funny, dude. But yeah, it was a trip seeing y'all, man. Y'all blew the doors off the place. It was a great show, and I became a fan. I was a fan of the record, and then I got to see y'all live just by happenstance. I didn't live in New York, but y'all happened to be playing there, and I saw that show.
Those early Bronx shows, especially those early ones in New York, were really, really special shows. Those were always really cool, and I have only the best memories about that time. I mean, some of the stories I could tell you, shit. Me and Matt, sometimes, actually a lot of times, for some reason, our tours would end and start in New York. So we always ended up fucking deadhead driving from LA to New York or New York back to LA. So we were fucking constantly out there. And me and Matt sometimes would stay a little longer, you know, an extra week just to fuck around in New York.
Yeah.
And we would sleep in our manager's office. So we'd be in there, you know, we would have been out all night, and we'd be in there just half naked and fucking still drunk from the night before when these people are showing up to work. Oh man.
I saw y'all as well, because one of my friends, a mutual friend of ours, Angela Seferati, that worked at Motor City Bar in Lower East Side.
Hell yeah.
I used to DJ there as well, and
you did?
Yeah.
Fuck. God damn, we had some wild times there.
Yeah, 100%. And she would sometimes text me like, the Bronx guys are here, and I'd be like, all right. Even if it was on a weeknight, I'd be like, fuck it, I guess I'm gonna be hungover tomorrow. And I'd stop in and like high five y'all and be like, I love your shit. And then I'd end up getting wasted and calling in sick the next day, you know. So yeah, it was. I hear you. It's just funny, y'all. And I saw y'all at least 2 times per record in New York. Like I saw,
that's awesome.
Easily. I feel like I saw y'all every time you came through New York, and I saw you seemingly at different venues each time. Probably a bunch of which that are closed or have relocated, like the Knitting Factory. But
certainly,
yeah, I saw y'all no shortage of times. It was a fun time,
dude. Those early 2000s in New York, the Lower East Side was still cool.
It was still cool.
What a fucking rad time to have experienced that.
100%.
Because it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh my God, no.
It's New York is like my I shouldn't say that.
I know where you're going. I left New York after 15 years, so you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah. It's just so different now.
Yeah.
And I have such fond memories of what it was. I kind of hate to tarnish those by going back and seeing what it is now.
I know. I moved out there in 2005, the summer of 2005. So at that point, it was starting to change a little bit, but it was still wild. It was still fun, especially in the Lower East Side. I ended up living in the Lower East Side for a little while. I was like, cool. This is the shit, man. It was so much fun. Those first couple of years, like, you know, it was good times.
Yeah.
But Of those New York shows, I always thought that they were especially explosive, and I know that the Bronx, even to today, still kind of has kept that energy alive. But when y'all were sort of starting the band, I mean, it sounds like you were involved in different aspects of the record industry or whatever, and then you formed this band. But what were some of the influences? Because for me, I always heard a little bit of AC/DC and or maybe a little Guns N' Roses, like I said.
Well, certainly, yeah.
And maybe some Black Flag.
Yeah. There was definitely some bands that were common ground between all of us. We all kind of came from different areas geographically, but also in a musical sense.
Right.
You know, so Matt was totally the Southern California punk guy.
Right.
Black Flag all day long.
Yeah.
You know, Joby was a little further out there in the fucking art world, and his musical tastes were all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, from the Grateful Dead to Black Flag, you know, another common ground that we all kind of had. My parents didn't play music, but they're huge fans of music. So I grew up in the Seattle area, and my parents were really into New Orleans music.
Yeah.
So they'd bring me to the Jazz Fest every year, and I got just an overload of influence from that.
Sure.
You know, you being from there, you obviously know the
It's crazy down there.
talent that comes out of that fucking city is
nuts.
just crazy.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, we all kind of had these few common bands that we all grew up with, AC/DC and Guns N' Roses.
Sure.
And so when we went to, after we recorded our first 3 songs, we thought we'd make a record out of it and just record, you know, 7, 8 more songs.
Yeah.
So the management that we had at the time also managed the guitar player from Guns N' Roses, Gilby Clarke.
Yeah.
And he was a producer.
Right.
So we ended up doing the rest of the record at Gilby's house.
That's amazing.
So, and dude, it was, and the fucking coolest guy in the world.
Yeah.
Coolest guy you could ever meet.
Yeah.
Gilby Clarke. I can't say enough good things. I'm still great friends with him to this day. We ride motorcycles together.
Amazing.
He's fucking awesome. Best dude.
Wow.
So he kind of helped us get together our last little batch of songs and make that first record, and it just kind of took off from there.
So there were different drum sessions on that first record?
Yeah. So the first batch of songs was Heart Attack, American, White Tar, and whatever the last song is called. And then the rest were done at Gilby's house.
Wow. It all sounds like it's got some continuity to it to have separate drum sessions in particular. So
certainly
the mixing, mastering process, etc., production, engineering, whatever, managed to kind of pull that together. I'd have to go back and listen to it knowing that to see if I could make a discernible, some sort of difference from track to track. Maybe, but all across the board, it just sounds like a big, raucous, fucking high-energy punk rock record. It's great.
That's what it was. I mean, we had absolutely no idea what we were doing. You know, that was all just kind of thrown together, and that's part of, I think, what makes it kind of a special record, to me at least, is nothing was forced. You know, everything was just like, fuck, we got some songs. We didn't even have 11 songs at the time. We were writing shit in the studio.
Wow.
You know, like we were just throwing it together and being kids and having fun, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine as the records progressed, did y'all change sort of the mentality around recording, or was it still sort of
100%?
Was it
100%? It got a lot more regimented after that.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a whole other conversation, and we can get into it if you want. But yeah, our second record was the polar opposite from that experience.
Okay.
Which was fucking awesome in itself too.
Yeah.
But just a whole different way of doing things. I guess, well, definitely a lot more structured.
Yeah. I mean, it just sounds like y'all are sort of naive kids going into it, just rocking out, playing, and then you got this really cool record. And then I guess at that time, I mean, was it expectations changed, not only from the band, but maybe other people associated with it, where it's like, we need this, that, or the other, or was it y'all still pretty much making the calls of what it was going to be and how you were going to do it?
we were all pretty much making the calls. When we signed with Island Def Jam, we had that first record done already, so they had absolutely no say in that record. And when we signed with them, we had the foresight to be like, keep your fucking hands off of us for a few years. Let us tour this. Let us become a band and get to know not only each other, but how to be a band, how to make it so that we could survive and do this thing, you know, and try and create something instead of forcing it down people's throats. Try and create something organic, you know, where we're actually out there playing 300 fucking shows a year in order to get the fans, instead of just being plugged into the fucking system.
Right. Yeah.
So we did that, and then when it came for our Island Def Jam release, our big major label release, things changed a lot, and they put us with a big producer, and you know, we had a huge, to us, budget, and that was a fucking trip. That was a super wild experience and a super fucking cool experience, and it really taught us a lot about, I mean, songcraft and just the studio in general. Like, just from that experience alone, you know, Joby went on to become a producer and amassed all this gear, and so yeah, we learned a lot. We did it with this producer named Michael Beinhorn, who big swinging dick in the late 90s, early 2000s, you know, did every fucking big record you can think of that was on rock radio.
Wow.
You hear fucking crazy stories about him. You know, he's the dude that fired Hole's drummer and had a session guy come in, and he was notoriously super hard on drummers.
Was he hard on you?
Thankfully, no. Thankfully, he really liked the way that I approached the drums and the way the drums sounded when I played them. He's got fucking dog ears.
Yeah.
And the way that I struck the drums, he was super into.
Nice.
And so we ended up recording that record at a studio down in Venice Beach, right on the boardwalk. You know, we built this big drum platform to make everything kind of resonate more. And I think we even threw mics under the we had mics all over this fucking place.
Yeah.
Huge ceilings, and yeah, it was awesome. And we put together this wild drum kit. I had a 28-inch kick drum. And
was that your Vistalite kit, or an acrylic kit?
No, this was pre-Vistas. The kick drum was an old 60s Ludwig.
Nice.
And then I used my Birch Toms 14 and 18, and I think most of that was tracked on a shallow bell brass.
Oh, nice. Really? Wow.
Yeah, we ended up getting a super fat sound out of the shallow one.
Yeah, interesting.
Without all the ring at the big one. That's kind of typical to that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so this dude, he's fucking wild. So Pro Tools had been out for a little while, and it was pre Pro Tools HD.
Wow.
And so he had some brand new software that had just come out that recorded in HD. He was all about it, right? So he wanted to use this gets super nerdy.
That's all right. Go for it.
Sum it up. So he had flown all this gear out from New York to make this system work. But the issue with that system or that software was, it was nearly impossible to edit. Like, it wasn't like Pro Tools where you could chop it up and throw things together.
Oh.
So that entire record, those are full drum takes.
No way.
Yeah, there's not a single edit on that entire record.
Good for you, dude. Holy shit.
Yeah, it took a lot of fucking work and a lot of him we did a lot of pre-production.
Yeah.
You know, we sat down and fucking went over and over and over things. And not only did he kind of, he fucking, not only me, he turned us all upside down, you know? And I mean, to the point where Matt was going to quit playing music altogether. Like, this dude fucking tore us down.
Oh boy.
And it was exactly what we needed.
Huh.
And he definitely got the best performances out of us that we could have gotten at that time.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like having seen y'all, like I said, on the first record and then come the second record, y'all definitely seemed that much like a tighter juggernaut of a band.
Yeah, that was Michael Beinhorn. He put us through the ringer.
It's interesting too, because there are definitely producers that I know about that will go unnamed. One in particular that's specifically hard on drummers. And I've talked to some drummers that were just like, I didn't need that shit. It bummed me out and I hated working with him. So it's good that y'all were able to pull it through and then, you know, you got a great record out of it. But the flip side of that is that sometimes it's too fucking much and you don't want to hear that. And it's counterproductive.
Absolutely. Things that I've found with different producers. I just did the last kind of studio session thing that I did was with Ross Robinson.
Okay.
And he's kind of notorious for being a little tough on drummers. Yeah. Did you record with him?
No, but I've talked to plenty that have.
Yeah. I fucking love him.
Okay.
And because I love a challenge. And I know everybody works differently. And definitely I've found that you need to put your ego 100% aside. You know, like that's the worst thing that in the situations that I've been in is walk into a room and be like, fuck yeah, I'm the dude. This is, you know, be like water, go in there, fucking, you know, work with it. And that's how you're going to get the best result.
Right.
And so with Ross Robinson, he was asking me to do shit that literally was impossible because I've only got 2 legs and 2 arms. He's not a drummer.
Right.
And he knows what he wants to hear. And he was just kind of like, figure it out.
Right.
And that was fucking fun for me.
Yeah.
You know, to get in there and play shit that just felt fucking like I had 2 left shoes on.
Yeah.
But ended up with this really unique drum part.
Right.
You know? So that it was really cool to work with him.
Nice. Crazy. Yeah. And then, I mean, you got the third record as well that I really dig. And the intro to Knifeman has always been an interesting one. I saw y'all on that record, obviously, as well. And I was like, I want to see him play this because you know, the rim to Tom thing that you play in there.
Totally.
Yeah.
So the third record, right before we got dropped from Island, we knew it was coming because they were dropping all of their rock bands Thursday and, you know, all those bands. And so we started to demo for a new record. We literally just had like a shitty little 8-track and we recorded just some garbage and sent it to them. And we were like, we need more money to make more demos, right? And so they started giving us money and we ended up buying a bunch of gear and making our own studio so we could make our own records.
Awesome.
So the third Bronx record was the first one that we did ourselves. We had a producer come in.
Yeah.
But so that was different fucking experience in itself. But it was kind of cool because it was, you know, our own spot and it was very, very hands-on. We, you know, had a lot of say in what went down.
Nice.
So that particular song, Joby had that guitar part for a long time. I think it was written for the second record and we couldn't really find the right, it's so straight and it doesn't do a whole lot on the guitar.
Sure.
That I was struggling with finding something to make it interesting. Because that's kind of how I approached the drums in that band, was the parts that were straighter, because we never had vocals when we wrote the music.
Right. So
the parts that were straighter, I tried to kind of turn on their ear, and the parts that were gnarly, I tried to smooth out a little bit.
Yeah.
To make everything kind of have a flow.
Yeah, sure. 100%.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, I think it worked.
So it was actually Joby's idea. We were listening to that Killing Joke record that Dave Grohl played drums on a lot at the time. And there's a song on there called Asteroid. And Joby was like, what if you tried to do this kind of like asteroid thing? And I'm pretty sure he double tracked a lot of the drums on that record. And so it's kind of, there's like this kind of tribal tom thing happening on that song.
Yeah.
And so I was listening to that song and listening to the guitar part, and I was just like, that doesn't make any sense at all. And just kind of kept fucking with it and ended up coming up with that first verse part.
Mm-hmm.
We needed something for the intro to make it a little just not as heavy.
Right.
So that when it went into the verse, it was like a fucking
Slamming.
punch in the nuts.
100%.
So I just fucking laid off the toms.
Yeah.
And I hit the rims.
Yeah.
So it's literally the same beat, just
right, exactly.
You know, I'm hitting the fucking rims instead of the drums. And yeah, it worked. It worked out awesome.
Absolutely.
You know, it made that section a lot more, just more interesting.
Yeah.
You know, to me at least.
Absolutely. Yeah, it throws it a little curveball. So then, like you said, when the chorus pops in or whatever, that it slams for sure. So it's
totally
pretty awesome. I saw y'all on that album in Jersey. It was the only time that I ever saw y'all in Jersey, in Hoboken at Maxwell's, I think it was, and y'all entered in.
I loved that place.
Y'all entered through the back and had to walk through the crowd to get to the stage and everything. And that too was a super raucous show because it was a pretty small place and it was packed. And
yeah,
that was a good time as well.
Is that the one that we blew up the PA?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we had this dude, fucking Tony Tuesdays. I fucking love this dude. He's wild as fuck. And he used to double mic my toms.
Wow.
Top and bottom.
Yeah.
And just, dude, it was fucking thunderous. It was wild as shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was notorious for blowing up PAs. I remember he blew up the PA that night.
Oh my God, man. Well, at some point, you know, and I mean, we could obviously dedicate an entire very long episode solely to the Bronx. And then of course you do have the mariachi version of the band. You do all that whole thing. But I mean, I guess at one point you end up out of the band, and then how long was it before you were in the Eagles of Death Metal?
I was kind of doing both for a little while.
Okay. Gotcha.
But we all knew that time was coming.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, me and Joby started the Bronx in 2002, and that was probably 2017 that I ended up leaving.
Yeah.
It was time.
Yeah.
It was time.
Of the tour cycles that y'all did, did y'all played close to like 300 shows in a year? And did y'all do that more than once?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, once we started the mariachi band, we a lot of times would play 2 shows a night. We do, you know, the mariachi band would open the show and the Bronx would close the show. So
exactly.
Yeah. When I put together some of the numbers, it was fucking ridiculous how many shows we were playing.
Dude, did you encounter any kind of pain from that kind of repetition that you had to deal with?
Big time. Big time.
That's so many shows.
Yeah, it was gnarly. And I never learned how to pace myself in the Bronx.
Right.
And whenever I'd try to, I felt like I was cheating people out of the full experience. So that was another big thing when I left the Bronx is I physically wasn't really able to do it like I could in my 20s.
Right.
You know, and there's no fucking way I could do it now.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how Joey does it.
I don't either. I don't understand it.
He is pounding the fuck out of those drums. I mean, just like I used to, but fuck, not at my age. But yeah, man, it was like almost every single show I'd puke just from exertion and heat and stress.
Yeah.
But it was fucking gnarly, and it fucked me up. You know, I ended up, a buddy of mine is Dave Elitch. You probably know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did a lesson with him a couple of years ago now, and he sat down and you know, like gave me a massage and was kind of just feeling on me, and he's like, dude, you have a shitload of scar tissue built up on your muscles.
Yeah.
He's like, you have to have somebody go in there and break all that shit up. Because he's like, that's fucking crazy. You fucked yourself up good.
Wow.
And that was just, you know, years of
just
slamming.
I know. I've been playing for 30 years, by no means ever toured as extensively as you did. but definitely have had my aches and pains, but have throughout the years have gone to when I can find a good chiropractor that also massages all that shit out. It's super painful, but the only way to get back out of the pain is unfortunately to go back through some of it. But that's been the only way that I've been able to keep myself able to play, really.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm in my mid 40s. It's not getting easier.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel you, brother. And you know, anybody listening to this that is experiencing some of those issues, you know, tennis elbow, fucking, you know, my back was just fucking shot.
Yeah.
Go talk to Dave Elitch.
Yeah.
Have him sort out the ergonomics of your playing,
Sure.
and it will make a fucking world of difference.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to break those habits. It's really hard.
100%.
And that's what he does. Sometimes you have to fucking just kind of start fresh. And you know, a lot of times unlearning how to do things is harder than learning them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, posture and just go to Dave. He will sort you out, and you will be a much happier person, and
Right.
you'll be able to fucking, you know, do that shit like Joey does
Yeah, exactly.
at our age.
That's funny. Man. Did when you started with the Eagles of Death Metal, was that I mean, it sounds like you were physically ready to sort of tone it down, the intensity down. So I guess, was it sort of welcome the maybe sort of the lower tempo range and overall sort of intensity?
Absolutely. And you know, I wasn't an angsty 20-year-old.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
like I grew up, and I'm, you know, I maybe listen to punk rock once a month now. You know,
Yeah.
like, so yeah, I was changing, you know. I think we all kind of were.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was an interesting time, because maybe people could kind of sense that was going on, because right before I joined Eagles, I got hit up by Brian Baker from Bad Religion to do a tryout for them. I sat down and I learned a bunch of songs, and I kind of had a couple weeks to think about it. And when it came down to it, I didn't want to fucking play punk rock anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been an awesome career move for me.
100%. Yeah.
But to do, especially to play in a band like Bad Religion as a career move, nah.
Yeah.
That ain't right.
Yeah.
That ain't punk rock, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
They needed somebody that fucking wanted to be there, and you know, and they got it. And that dude fucking slams. And I've never seen that. I've seen them with, you know, 4 different drummers now, and that's the way those fucking songs need to be played.
Right on.
That dude is fucking bitching.
Yeah.
So yeah, shortly after I stepped away from the Bad Religion thing, I was this is so fucking LA. I was at a strip club in LA, the Jumbo Room, if anybody knows it. And it's kind of notorious strip club in LA. They used to have like midgets, and Courtney
Awesome.
Love used to strip there. And,
I'm way more into the midgets than Courtney Love.
Yeah. So it's kind of a freak show.
Yeah.
So I was there one night, and the guitar tech from Eagles was in there. And I had met Eagles at a few festivals, but I didn't really know him.
Yeah.
You know, I was just shooting the shit with them, and I knew they kind of had a different cast of characters always in that band. I was like, who's playing drums with you guys? This was right after the Paris incident.
Right. Thank God you weren't there for that. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oof.
No shit.
Woo.
So, you know, I asked who was playing drums, and he was like, you know, there's this guy that, you know, he's been in the band for like a year, but we aren't really into him.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, huh, really? He's like, you know, Jesse's having people over to his house tonight. You should come by. And I was like, oh, you don't say. So I went over to Jesse's house, and we had it. It was our first real hangout. We had met before, but it was our first real hangout. And it was definitely like a couple dogs sniffing each other's butts, like trying to figure each other out at first. But it was cool. He's a wild fucking dude.
Yeah.
And we ended up having a really cool conversation about music. And so the next day I'm good friends with Josh Homme.
Mhm.
So I just called up Josh and I was like, hey, what's going on with the Eagles?
Yeah.
I want in. And he's like, dude, you're in. You're perfect. And that's how it happened.
Amazing. What a story. Holy shit.
Yeah. Jumbo's clown room.
Oh man, all roads lead back to Jumbo's Clown Room. Amazing, man.
Yeah, no
Damn.
doubt.
Well, you mentioned a little bit earlier of riding around with dirt bikes early on and playing drums, and then now obviously you get this break, and then you're back on the dirt bikes. Did you injure yourself at all? Because my grandfather died on one. My dad on a motorcycle. He drove off the side of a mountain.
Oh my God.
I grew up riding motorcycles with my dad, but to this day, I've never gotten one. I have mountain bikes and I do bicycling. I did BMX growing up and I like going mountain biking, but I've kind of been a little hesitant to put an engine underneath the two wheels myself, you know?
I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
You know, motorcycling for me, I got back into it in my early 30s when I was still in the Bronx, and I needed an activity for when I was off tour where I could get out of LA
Yeah.
and get away from people and just kind of have some me time. And it's the fucking perfect activity for that.
Yeah.
It's not almost meditative. It is meditative because you have to be so focused on what's going on. So
Yeah.
you are so fucking present. There ain't nothing else in your head,
Yeah.
you know? And that love for motorcycles came back instantly for me.
Yeah.
And so I started riding motorcycles again. And then I can't explain to you how good that was for my mental health.
Yeah.
Like it sounds so fucking cliche to say it saved my life, but
Yeah.
it really, like, it has a profound effect on my mental well-being.
Huh.
When I'd have a little time in between tours, I started working at a motorcycle shop, just doing, you know, little repair stuff, service stuff,
Mhm.
which I fucking love to do.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then when COVID kicked off, I thought I'd get into vintage British bikes.
Yeah.
So I bought just a shitty old clapped out old BSA
Uh-huh.
and built, you know, a 60s dirt bike out of it.
Nice.
And then I started racing at 40 years old, which is a fucking terrible idea. And I'm having the fucking time of my life with it.
Awesome.
You know, it's really cool to have two things that you love so much, playing drums and motorcycling, be something that you can actually make a little bit of money doing.
Of course.
And survive on. Like,
Yeah.
that's pretty fucking awesome.
Pretty good, man.
Pretty fortunate. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing with my time. I learned how to fucking build motorcycles and race them.
Wow. Pretty good.
Dude, I just got back from Hawaii. Me and my girlfriend, and 23 other people all shipped our, you know, 60s and 70s dirt bikes over to Kauai and did a vintage motocross race.
No
right
way.
on the course was right on the fucking beach.
What?
Oh my God, it was awesome. So we went over for like a week. We found some trails that they used for the set for Jurassic Park. So one of the days we took our bikes up into the fucking rainforest, through rivers and on these trails. Dude, it was fucking wild. It was one of the coolest things we've ever done, for sure.
That sounds amazing, man. Damn.
Yeah.
At which point, I know you've been out in LA for some time. So when did you move from LA?
Actually, only a year ago.
Okay.
And which is kind of funny because I've been talking about it for 10 years.
Yeah.
I need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
The thing for especially after I joined Eagles of Death Metal, I'd come home from tour and just be fucking shell shocked.
Yeah.
And the last thing I wanted to do was be around people.
Yeah.
Jesse being a super social dude, on the average day, we'll pull up to a venue and, you know, there'll be people waiting outside in line before the show, and he'll grab people out of line and fill our tour bus with them.
Oh.
And then do the same with the backstage areas. So you literally have nowhere to go.
Oh, wow.
To have any kind of, you know, peace of mind. And that's every single day.
Whoa. Yeah.
And then add the partying after the show, goes on
Right.
top of that, and it's a fucking lot.
Yeah.
After a month of that, I come home and I'm just like, ugh, fucking, and I'm living right in the middle of LA.
Oof.
So yeah, so it was not good. So yeah, I would start I had a bag packed at home with a fucking sleeping bag and a tent in it, and the first thing I'd do when I kicked whatever jet lag was got on my bike and just rode into the middle of the fucking woods or into the middle of the desert and just went camping for 3 days by myself, unfucking plugged.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, which is fucking awesome.
That's amazing.
But so yeah, last year I was just like, I was living with my girlfriend at the time down in Glendale, and we were just driving around. We were like, fuck, let's go just poke around Ventura. I've always wanted to move up here. I've always liked the vibe. And we ended up finding a place and fucking moving a month later.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just did it. Just fuck it. And it's tough for her because she works at Disneyland.
Oh.
Which is in Anaheim.
Oh.
Which is another hour and a half south of LA. So that's a 2.5 hour commute.
And she's not having to do that on a daily basis.
Thankfully, no.
I would be like, that's not sustainable. You couldn't do
that. No, not at all. Thankfully she only has to go in once, sometimes twice a week.
Okay.
So it's not so, it still sucks, but yeah, it's not so bad. And the quality of life that we have up here makes up for it tenfold.
Yeah. Yeah. After 15 years of being in New York, my wife and I, and now our 2 sons, we moved out to Utah. So it's funny when you were mentioning getting away from people and on a bike. One of the reasons I wanted to come out here was to, like I was saying, do the mountain biking thing. But part of that is, again, also in what you said, sort of the myopic singular sort of focus that you have when you're in that moment. And I can't experience that anywhere else. I'm too much of a scatterbrain to ever experience that, but I can experience that for those 30 minutes when I'm flying down a mountain, and to be able to go do that, and 2, get away from people after being in New York for 15 years. That has been fantastic for my mental health as well. I hear you.
Exactly. That's what it's all about, man.
Yeah, dude.
That was our first trip that when COVID first kicked off. My brother's got a house out in Arizona, so I got the fuck out of LA. I had no idea. Nobody had any idea what COVID really was at the time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy.
So I got the fuck out of LA. Then Tammy, my girlfriend, came and met me out there, and we did a motorcycle trip up through Arizona and up into Utah.
Southern Utah?
Oh my God, dude.
Did you do Bryce Canyon and Zion or Moab or any of that?
We sure did. Moab was closed at the time, unfortunately, but
it's a whole sprawling, like, adult playground where you could also die quite easily, but it's still
very
easily. It's crazy how easy you could die out here.
But goddamn, on a motorcycle that you can blast around on the dirt.
Oh yeah, dude.
Holy shit. We ended up in, I don't know if you're familiar with Swing Arm City. It's like a huge dirt bike playground with massive, like, 150-foot walls and shit. Yeah. And we're on 500-pound street bikes with knobby tires, just ripping around. It just had the time of our lives. Yeah. It was fucking awesome. Just love it out there.
We bought this killer 4Runner, jacked up with big tires, V8 engine in it, and we went down to Moab, and we go down all these dirt trails and off-road trails, and we've been doing that, and I'm like, wow, now we're really experiencing this. The fact that we could have been out here and not done this that would have been so stupid on our behalf. This is what you do when you're out here.
Absolutely. What a gorgeous part of the country. And I mean, I traveled a lot with my parents, camped a lot with my parents when I was a kid, and we were always pretty coastal.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was so fucking cool in Utah.
It's
and on tour, all you see is Salt Lake City, which is pretty.
Right.
But you don't see idea. Fucking
Southern Utah is a whole different thing.
Jesus Christ.
Geographically, it's probably the most diverse area, I think, in the United States, because you can go through alpine forest, you can go through mountains, you can go through snow drifts, you can go through desert, you can go through plains, you can go through like 6 different topographies, whatever you want to call it, and it's just like it keeps going. It's crazy.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
it is so unique. It's a mind blower.
Yeah, dude. So I've been enjoying that, as you might imagine.
Yeah, I'll bet. I'm jealous.
Yeah, dude. Well, right on, man. Shit, it was fun talking to you. I'm glad we got to go back and revisit some of that early Bronx stuff. Like I said, it's kind of such a nostalgic thing for me because it was one of the things that I was doing when I first arrived in New York City. I was going to see y'all all the time, you know. So
Right on. It's really fun to think back and talk about that stuff. I know Matt's been doing a podcast and I listen to it, and a lot of times, old Bronx stuff will come up and it's just shit like, fuck, I totally forgot that happened. It's like it's
Absolutely.
really cool to conjure up those old memories of that time because it was so special.
Hell
Special time in music and just in our lives personally, and really fun.
Hell yeah, man. Right on. Well, Jorma, it was fun talking to you, man. I'm glad we got to catch up. Took a minute to sort out all the bullshit technologically, but
hey, we got there.
We got there, dude. But yeah, man, stay in touch, and we'll have to kick it one of these days.
It sounds great. All right, Jody.
Right on.
All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Jorma, for catching up. We've been talking about doing it for some time, so it's great to revisit some of those albums and the crazy stories that coincided with them. Hope y'all enjoyed it. We'll catch you on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.